control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today we are talking another sort of 80s anthology series. This one's a bit more specialised. This is called, sometimes it's called A Nightmare on Elm Street the series, sometimes it's called Freddy's Nightmares. I'm going to call it Freddy's Nightmares, but essentially it's an anthology series which is a spin-off of the Nightmare on Elm Street film series, where Freddy introduces each story. So in effect, we're kind of getting Freddy acting like the Crypt Keeper in Tales from the Crypt, that kind of thing. He is the horror host. This was created by Wes Craven, certainly the characters, and Robert Englund is reprising his role as Freddy as the presenter here, so that's kind of interesting, right? And now this one ran for a long old time. It ran from 1988 to 1990, and there were 2 seasons and 44 episodes in all. Most episodes, not all, but most episodes apparently, and I have to say that because I haven't seen almost any of these. I've seen the first one. That's it. Apparently, they consist of 2 stories per episode, and the stories tend to interlink. Like, so for example, a minor character in the first story becomes the major character in the second story. But there's sort of interlinking, which is interesting. This is one of the few anthology series which is an anthology of anthologies, a bit like the Night Gallery, in that each show has a couple of different stories rather than each show being one story and the next week being another story and so on. So this one was a bit different. Now the one we're talking about tonight is the first one here. Now this is one story, but I believe after that it was it sort of broke up into this 2-story format. The other ones that's similar, I guess, are something like Twisted, the Australian horror sort of suspense anthology series, Twisted and Too Twisted. So there's not many of these, and they're kind of interesting. And also we're coupling it with this built-in presenter in the show with Freddy Krueger. Now Freddy's a good character to have as a presenter because he's got that kind of evil humour about him, and it kind of works for a Crypt Keeper type of character. Now this first episode, which is called No More Mr. Nice Guy, was actually directed by Tobe Hooper, which is interesting, and it actually is a prequel story to the main Nightmare on Elm series. It's i.e. how did Freddy come to die? So, yeah, this is one for the Nightmare on Elm Street fans. I have seen it before too, because I am a Nightmare on Elm Street fan, so this was the second watch for me this time around. And the series was produced on New Line Television, so that's the kind of background. So they were planning sort of different aspects. They did want to do a TV series with Freddy Krueger involved, but what they didn't want, they decided, was Freddy Krueger just murdering people each week, because they'd have no real chance to develop a main character and maybe an antagonist for Freddy, a through line on that, but they couldn't say how it was going to work. So what they did is come up with this idea, which is, as I say, a sort of Tales from the Crypt template. However, they did integrate within the 44 episodes we're talking about. 8 of them apparently have stories relating to Freddy, as does this first one. This one is really about Freddy. As I said, it's a prequel story. But otherwise it was sort of connected. But I think it was all set around the town the same town. I think there was that. And often Freddy would be at the top of the show talking about stuff and do an epilogue. Again, much like the Crypt Keeper, right? It's they some of the series in this episodes in the second series also formed like a mini arc, so there was like a set of stories that were kind of interconnected, not just two. Now, interestingly, there was a high school used for filming some of this called Torrance High School, but that was also then used in the series that came later, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which so everyone kind of probably knows the look of this school. If you've watched any number of Buffy episodes, you probably got the idea. Now, some notable actors that actually took part in this series I'm just going through the list. I mean, the most notable one is probably Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt was in it in his early days, so that's kind of interesting, right? I'm trying to see. Jeffrey Combs appeared in it. George Lazenby, of all people, the ex-James Bond, and Sandal Bergman, probably best known as the love interest in the first Conan the Barbarian film. Very effective in that role. She was Sandal Bergman as well. Valeria was the role she played. So, as I say, it consists of 2 seasons, 22 episodes in each season, 44 in all. The first season aired between October the 8th, 1988 and May the 27th from 1989. So, on every day, every week for that entire period, I would imagine, for 22 episodes. Then it started again in October, again in 1989, finishing in March 1990. So, interesting. Right, this particular story, No More Mr. Nice Guy, I have to say, is a little weak. It's very, very melodramatic. It is a must-see for a Freddy fan, though, I'd say. This is really worth seeing. However, you kind of feel, if this story was written on its own as a story, nothing connected with any films, it would definitely not be constructed in the way it is. This is really constructed to presage the activities of Freddy that comes later. In that he kind of is a human being in this. It starts with him being in a court and the case being thrown out because he wasn't read his Miranda rights, which I believe is slightly different from the films. I think in the films it was like the search warrant wasn't signed or not signed correctly or something like that, but in this one he wasn't read his Miranda rights, and we find out the man responsible for that, Lieutenant Blocker, whose twin daughters were targets for Freddy before he caught him, is responsible for that mistake. So he's the one who's kind of responsible for Freddy walking free. And there's one point he even says to his wife, I had him in my sights, I could have shot him. And she's like, why didn't you? I'd say this is terribly melodramatic. It really is. Why didn't you? It's all that. So, yeah, it's okay. And the acting is not great either. Robert Englund is the big standout, really. I think that's kind of obvious. But he's really doing full Freddy. He's not doing Dream Freddy. He is doing Dream Freddy, but this isn't Dream Freddy. It's real Freddy. You know, he's got the hat, he's got the glove. One point he finds the glove and he's kind of chuckling away, Freddy-like, and stuff like that. Meanwhile, the residents are up in arms. They're saying, I believe in a fair trial, but our system doesn't even allow it to get to trial. And they're kind of considering becoming a sort of vigilante mob. So there's all of that going on. So, so the story progresses. And there's various family dramas. We do get Freddy in his boiler room, acting all, sketchy and stuff like that. So the mob go to look for Freddy, but he's not there, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So Kruger then attacks a police officer who's actually assigned to look after Blocker's family because they know he's out. So Freddy kind of is menacing the family, but the mob turn up. Freddy runs away. So they there's this to and fro with the cops, like, we've got to do it by the book, and others is like, nah, forget the book, we're beyond the book, and all this. So they kind of chase him. Freddy kind of he's not bothered. He laughs at them. There's that going on. So essentially, what happens is Kruger then baits Blocker about how pretty his girls are. Shaming was interrupted last time, and so on. But Freddy has a number of pronouncements at this point. He says things like, I am free forever. So they kind of douse him in gasoline and burn him, which we kind of know. We know that happens to Freddy, right? And then the mob sort of get sworn to secrecy and stuff like that. But then Blocker starts having dreams. Like he dreams of getting a package. He opens it and Freddy's hand pops out into his face, kind of thing. And there's stuff like that going on. And basically, there's even the refrain where we see girls singing 1, 2, Freddy's 1, 2, I'm coming for you. So slightly different. And then Blocker then gets a letter saying, I'm burning in hell, see you soon. Something like that. I can't remember the specific words. It's kind of along those lines. Essentially, Blocker starts having dreams. He has dreams of horrible dentistry and sort of things involving Freddy and his daughters, somewhat. So we know that Freddy's infecting dreams, but essentially in the end, Blocker just dies. While of these dream states. So we get Freddy, full Freddy, pretty much in the second half of this. As I say, it's not a great one. It's quite melodramatic. It's kind of silly. The acting's not good. It's done on videotape rather than film, so it doesn't look great. So there is that, and it signs off with Freddy does the sign off himself. And one interesting thing when he presented this is Freddy actually says, "This is a change. This isn't your nightmare. It's mine." So he's telling this from the perspective of this is his nightmare, but he seems perfectly happy all the way through. But at one point he then looks at the camera and says, "Who's next?" Indicating he'll be coming for you, right? So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. And there's a number of script faux pas, mistakes, issues, like saying, if we kill Freddy, we're the same as him. No. Killing a murderous paedophile or what? Yeah, it's never clear what Freddy is. I think he was intended to be that, but in the end, he's a child murderer, I guess. It's not the same as enacting justice or sort of vigilante mob. I guess it's not obviously not nice, but it's not the same level as Freddy's behaviour, in my opinion. That's my personal opinion. But it's not right either. Okay, so it was okay. I would say watch this first one if you're a Freddy completist. I can't comment on the rest of the episodes because I haven't seen it. I may go back and watch them at some time, but I've got other shows that I probably want to get to first, such as Tales from the Crypt. I'd rather watch for Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side. Any of those rather than before I get to back to this one. So yeah, it was okay. Anyway, I'm going to wind up there. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to